Sup, Ryu here for the Council Network. Let's talk about Season 1, Episode 1, Moment of Truth, Marvel's Luke Cage via Netflix. If you have yet to see the episode, go to Netflix and watch the episode right now, because you really do not want to miss out on this episode. This episode was fantastic. So, I'm going to be completely just setting the tone here for the reviews. I never read a Luke Cage comic. I've only done a little bit of research, and I was like, oh god, the comics are kind of far out there. 70s style kind of feel and tone to it. What the show brings is a completely different environment from Daredevil and Jessica Jones, setting itself in Harlem, which is great because honestly, I love what they did with the episode and the mood. Most of it takes place, part of it in the beginning takes place at Pops. Now, Pops is a character that's pretty important to Luke because he's employed, but he employs him. And I think this is pretty much like the father figure, and this sets up for the protagonist, I guess, for the episode. Let's put it that way. So you have Dante and his guys who work for, they want the money that Cottonmouth has, and you don't call him Cottonmouth because he gets really, really mad. But this episode is fantastic, and you basically, without directly showing it, you get parts of Luke Cage's origin story. You get, it talks about a supplier from Cottonmouth. There's a lot of world building that they had to do in the first episode, and honestly, it just feels like a fluid piece of motion where it doesn't feel forced and at times does not feel slow. It has a good pace to it. One thing that didn't bother me about Jessica Jones because it was so different than Daredevil is Daredevil was like, season 1 was just, okay, here's Matt, and he's got to go quick. He's got to go, beat up the guys. And Jessica was a little more slow-paced, a little more drama. Luke Cage is kind of, I don't know how to really phrase it yet, just quite yet. It's got a bit of Jessica Jones and a bit of action. They actually talk about Jessica Jones in the episode, about when she pulled the shotgun to him and he survived it. And we get the joke names that Pops makes to him, Power Man, or, of course, the whole Bulletproof, Mr. Bulletproof. These are names he's had in the comics, but obviously he's always been Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, which also kind of gets nodded to at the very, very end of the episode. So, I want to say this much. This episode really did surprise me in setting the tone for the world because I was not expecting this episode to be that damn good. It really was. Dare I say this is probably better than Daredevil and Jessica Jones' first episode that they had. Now, around the first 10 minutes, there's a table that says The Incident. The Incident is pretty much Avengers, 1, because obviously these guys are in New York and Harlem, and he's like, you got the old guy, you got the green dude, you got, Tony Stark, and you got the blonde hair muscular man. And that's pretty much saying the Avengers in a nutshell. They get mentioned, and it feels really connected. Like, hey, you know what? Like, out of all the Netflix series, this is the one that feels the most connected, and it's not because of this opening scene here, it's because later in the episode, we're actually shown that pieces of Justin Hammer's weapons are pretty much on the streets of Harlem. Now that, I don't know what they're going to do with it, maybe it's just a nod to the movies, but honestly, it really does make Iron Man 2 feel more important than it used to. Instead of just being the Shield build-up, whole world-building movie that it was. Not to sound the wrong way. So, of course, we find out that Luke owes money. He's working 2 jobs. And he works for Cottonmouth in Cottonmouth's club. Because Cottonmouth's just like, I don't want to be called Cottonmouth and whatnot. But we're gonna call him Cottonmouth. Now, Luke Cage's boss, there's the major owner, and then there's a boss, and a sub-boss, and a sub-boss, and a sub-boss. So, his sub-boss is a complete dick, and honestly, I hope he gets what's coming to him. I really do. It's kind of one of those situations. We see Cottonmouth with this woman who is pretty much the public piece, where she's running for mayor and everything. Let's put it that way. So, the one thing that I want to talk about here is they're not in a relationship. They're pretty much cousins. Let's put it that way. And he's a thug. She's, a politician. She'll do whatever it takes to, to make him give her the money that she needs. Kind of situation. I like where this is going. But that Hammer Industries really sets up the mood. Now, the one thing I was not expecting, right off the bat, besides the Hammer Industry thing, is of course the whole shootout, which was great, building the drama up without being so slow and forcing the action was fantastic. I'm just so discombobulated this morning when it comes to talking about Luke Cage because I'm so damn excited about this series after watching this episode. It was fantastic. He's getting he gets set up with this girl. I didn't catch her name, and they're at the bar and he's serving her Cosmos, and it turns out she's pretty much one of the detectives that is working the case against Cottonmouth, which is kind of weird because it's like, I'm wondering if later in the season, if she's gonna like just go directly to Cottonmouth and go, guess what, I'm busting your ass because I was in your club and I know all the crazy shit going down. I love the world building though, and you often forget because it's a Marvel property that this isn't PG-13, it's complete rated R, and you're gonna get those sex scenes, but the sex scene just pretty much sets up, the oh crap, Dante's dead kind of situation, and sets up for where where she was placed with Luke to set up for future episodes. Now, halfway through the episode, and I've talked about this series a few times, Sons of Anarchy actor Theo Russell, if I didn't butcher his last name, actually makes an appearance. I remember him as Juice. So there's a lot of times I'm like, hey, when did Juice become such a badass? Because you're so connected to, after watching Sons of Anarchy, it's hard to let go of that. But he's fantastic here as Shades. That much I did catch because his presence on screen grabs you. It doesn't just sit there and go, oh yeah, this is, Juice from Sons of Anarchy. He got his neck cut. No, you feel the thug coming out of him, and I love the way he portrays himself. The attitude, the whole thing. And then Cottonmouth's like, this feels like a takeover. But there's certain things I'm wondering, and I haven't watched any of the other episodes yet. I'm wondering if Kingpin is involved somehow because he says his supplier. And we know that Kingpin has been in, his hands in everything. So maybe there's a chance that Kingpin is connected to this whole thing in some form of way. And I love it. Luke Cage is in with Pops in the shop. They're talking about giving them a better chance. That's something everyone wants. And then, of course, you get the politician set up where she's talking to Cottonmouth, and Cottonmouth's like, yeah, well, we got hit, and we can't give you the money that you gave us. I can't pay it back to you right now because I took a loss. But they find one of the two guys they're looking for that took Cottonmouth's money, and, well, they keep him at one of those dancer bars, whatnot, and yeah, he doesn't have a pretty ending. The one thing I gotta say though is I like the whole setting of the tone where they come up to the Chinese restaurant. Now this is where Luke, has to pay his rent, and there's a bunch of thugs like, hey, keep Harlem the way it is and whatnot. And then we get to the scene, like the mood just suddenly changes scene to scene, and I love it. Just the way you get Cottonmouth on the piano playing this song, it's like it's a farewell to this guy because you get to see that psychological aspect that you don't normally see in these Marvel movie villains that don't get nearly as much build-up because of the 13 hours that we get to spend with like Cottonmouth or Kingpin or Purple Man. And I love that because honestly it's fantastic. It's more drawn out, and that's nothing against the Marvel movies because when I go see a Marvel movie, that's what I want. I want that experience. But in the Netflix show, you get pretty much the reverse of that, where you get to have this drawn-out story for 13 hours, and it's like having Loki in the way that we have Loki, and it feels that important in these smaller stories, because they're not as a grand scale of, the Marvel Universe. And honestly, I'm okay with it. But, oof, man, they took him to Cottonmouth, and Cottonmouth's like, here's the problem, everyone wants to be a king. I wouldn't slap a woman, but I slap a bitch. And just the dialogue that Cottonmouth gives you, it's like, holy crap. And it's just the beatdown he gives to this kid. And the kid spits at him. He's like, alright, now I can hit you like a man. And then when he starts, bailing on the back of his head and the blood is gushing out, you're like, holy shit. You forget how violent this, can be. But again, rated R. And I love it. I honestly love it. Because it's not on... This would never be this good on TV. I'm sorry. It's just how it is. And then, of course, we go back to Luke Cage. We have the scene where he's in prison and whatnot. And we know he's a fugitive to some degree. We don't know why. And then, of course, they put him in the tank. I think that's going to be fleshed out probably by, I want to say, episode 8. We're going to see some full-on, if I dare say, Wolverine kind of, antimanium scene there. The whole thing with Wolverine is him and Luke Cage pretty much have the same kind of experiments done to them, except a little bit, they're not, one gets old metal, one doesn't. That's, that goes without saying. But they're pretty much the same Weapon X kind of program, but they can't connect it here, so I'm really intrigued to see what happens there. And the final part I want to talk about the episode is, of course, the final scene where Luke Cage is coming in, to pretty much, pay the rent there. Not to pay the rent, but he sees these guys that, it's like, hey, keep Harlem the way it is. And he's like, what the hell's going on here? They're threatening his landlords, pretty much. And he just beats the shit out of them. And you get to see his powers on screen because he's got super strength. He's super endurance because if you shoot him or whatnot, he's going to just, put down the bullet and that's going to be a thing. It's great. I love it. And just the way it ended with, his landlord saying, hey, I want to hire you. And then he's like, don't worry, I got you. I love that because it sets up for, the idea maybe starting to pace through his mind, hey, heroes for hire. Luke is in a place where he's trying to move forward from the death of his wife. And at the same time, he's just trying to make it without causing any problems and without raising any eyebrows because he's a fugitive. We don't know why he's a fugitive completely just yet in the context of the series, because I don't think it was completely fleshed out in Jessica Jones Season 1. But honestly, I gotta be completely just real here. I love this episode, and it's not often I do this, but this episode's getting a 10 out of 10 because it was perfect. Most people will probably say 8.5 or 9. I felt the tone, the world building, everything was done in an hour time frame that did not feel forced. There was no parts I was like, I should skip this, kind of moment. Everything made sense piece by piece, and I love it. So, here's what's going to happen. Episode 2 review is going up tomorrow, and then so on for 13 days. The time of Comic-Con New York, don't worry, I'll have it pre-scheduled to come out in the morning. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content and you're brand new, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more. And I'll see you all next video as always. Till then.